You are now watching Believe. Do you believe?
I'm very excited now to be joined by Noah Schaefer, host of the Dawg Check on the Believe Podcast Network. I encourage everybody to go check that out before this weekend's game. But Noah, thank you so much for joining me. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So before we get into this Sunday's game, which obviously for Atlanta is now much more exciting. I think that they are 1-2 and not 0-3 coming into this, but everybody always had this circled on the schedule, regardless of kind of the quarterback situation, because I think the Browns are a very talented roster. But can you provide us with, maybe a minute overview of the Browns season so far through the first 3 weeks? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? How have they performed?
Yeah, so the first game, I think we came out guns blazing on defense. I think we had something to prove going against Baker Mayfield, and we came out with the win. Even though it was a lot closer than we would have liked. But you go into week 2, that was a pitiful performance by the defense. You can't give up those key plays in the final minutes of the game, especially to the Jets. That was a game we should have won. So I think the morale was definitely low there. And then you come into Thursday night on a short week. I think Sunday gave them a boost of energy, and they came out and they said, we need to tighten up. We need to fix this. They actually held a players-only meeting on defense to address what was going on. So hopefully they kind of just hit themselves a little bit and then realized what they had to do, and they came out with the win on Thursday. So right now it's not really what we were expecting, but I think we're off to a good start.
Yeah, and again, the big quarterback move in the offseason, which this will be the last time I bring up Deshaun Watson. That's not what we're here for, because he's suspended and the Falcons don't have to face him. But yeah, expectations were that this roster is really, really good overall. Obviously, Nick Chubb is one of my favorite running backs in the NFL, maybe my favorite running back, but I also went to UGA, so I'm biased. But then you add Amari Cooper this offseason, and he's really blossomed the last 2 weeks. I think I saw that quote early on where Jacoby Brissett was like, yeah, I kind of didn't realize how wide open he was until we got back and we watched that tape of the first week. And it was like, no, he's just always open. Let's throw him the ball more. And they've certainly done that. But like you mentioned, the Browns coming off of a Thursday night win, 29-17 against Pittsburgh, Atlanta 27-23 on the road against Seattle. So they come back east for the first time in 2 weeks. And they are hoping to get their 4th win all time against the Browns, which I was really shocked to find out. 15 matchups, 12-13 or 12-3 in the Browns' favor. But let's start with the biggest news, I think, of the week so far for the NFL, and that would be Myles Garrett's, single car crash accident on Monday afternoon. Reports are that no major injuries sustained. They took him to the hospital to check him out. His agent tweeted last night, but Noah, what is the latest here on Tuesday afternoon at 6:05 as we record? Have there been any developments? I know the team doesn't have to say anything really until Wednesday. So what are you hearing on that front?
Yeah, so nothing really new on Tuesday. He was discharged from the hospital Monday night. They said there was nothing broken, no major injuries. They just wanted to do some extra tests for some precaution, but it was a very scary incident. And if you know Cleveland, the weather is just kind of all over the place. So it was raining pretty heavily that day. And he was going down a road with a hill, and he saw an animal, and he swerved off of the road and flipped his car. So we're really thankful that he's okay, and not even from a football standpoint. We just want to make sure he's okay. If he misses Sunday's game, I don't care. I just want him to be okay. And yeah, we are very thankful that everything is all right, but just a very scary situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Browns are in no means a rival to the Falcons, even if this was Christian McCaffrey and Michael Thomas. At the end of the day, these guys are people first and they're athletes second, and the well-being of anybody on the football field, especially somebody as good as Myles Garrett, still kind of entering the prime of their career and already off to a great start this season. 3 sacks, 4 tackles for a loss, forced fumble, pass deflection in there as well. But let's say, worst case scenario, and fortunately it looks like the worst case scenario is still going to be pretty positive for the long-term health of Myles Garrett. But worst case scenario, he misses Sunday's game. Who would be the primary guy for Cleveland to probably step up and take his place?
So I think that would probably be rookie defensive end Alex Wright. We drafted out of Florida. And, coming into the third round, I saw his tape, and I really liked the player, but I understood it was going to be a project pick. He's
Hmm.
not really the quickest. He's not really the strongest. He doesn't have a lot of finesse, but he's lengthy. He can stop the outside run, and it's very similar to Jadeveon Clowney. If we can get him a little more explosive and a little stronger, he's really going to be a solid guy going into next year if Clowney decides to not re-sign. So I'm really expecting him to step up. And then rookie Isaiah Thomas out of Oklahoma, he's also another really nice run stopper. He's not as long, but he's really powerful and has a really quick punch. So I can see a really nice rotation out of them, and hopefully they can step in a big way.
It looks like, that probably will be the case, and both of those players will be featured pretty prominently, because as I was going through to, figure out what else we need to talk about on the injury front, it seems like the Browns are unfortunately pretty banged up already on defense at this point in the season. Jadeveon Clowney injured in week 2, missed week 3. They came out today. Kevin Stefanski not ruling him out for this week, but again, an ankle injury he's dealing with. So potentially, both of your starting defensive ends out for this game, which would mean that those young players really do have to step up in a big way, because Atlanta's offensive line has been playing well. But maybe the most important surefire injury that has happened so far is Anthony Walker at linebacker, lost for the year against the Steelers. Jacob Phillips got some praise for his kind of fill-in duty there in that game. I watched it. It was okay to me. I didn't see anything super special from him, but what should be the expectation with him stepping in for kind of a defensive captain for this Browns team?
So I think the Browns drafted him to be a starter, essentially. He was expected to fill a lot of shoes, and then he ended up getting into some injury issues, and then we had to go out and then kind of find a replacement. So
Mm.
I think they're expecting a lot out of him. Joe Woods has a lot of praise for him, and like you said, when he filled in on Thursday, there wasn't a lot that stood out to me. All around, but towards the end of the game, he kind of picked it up. He had a tackle for loss, and he prevented a couple first downs. But he does seem to get a little lost in the run game, kind of goes in the wrong gaps and some stuff like that. So if they are planning on giving the green dot to Jacob Phillips instead of somebody like John Johnson or Sione Takitaki or even JOK,
Mm-hmm.
that he's going to have to step up in a huge way and make sure those guys can communicate on the field, have a good example, and really perform for this defense.
Taki's nice, man. I would not mind, if I was a Cleveland fan, seeing him out there on the field a little bit more with some of these injuries popping up. But you mentioned JOK, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, for those who are, not among the initiated, but I fell in love with him in the draft. Really wanted the Falcons to get him there in the second round. Fortunately, they did not, but he's been playing well so far since he's entered the league. He sustained a groin injury in the game against Pittsburgh. So did Taven Bryan. So those are two, maybe not household names yet, but a little bit of glue guys there for Cleveland's defense. Again, is the defensive injury situation maybe better than I'm making it sound? Because I feel like I'm just naming a bunch of guys that I've heard of here in Atlanta, and that's not always a good sign when you're like, and this guy, and this guy, and this guy, and they're all out or potentially out. I mean, give us maybe some reasons why Atlanta fans should fear Cleveland's defense, because they definitely should. This is a good unit.
Yeah, so you talk about Taven Bryan, who had a hamstring injury. The Browns are really loaded on the defensive tackle position, and there's not really a lot of guys that are proven talent, but there is a lot of guys that have a lot of potential. Jordan Elliott,
Gotcha.
Tommy Togiai, Perion Winfrey, who has walked into some disciplinary issues, but he seems to be stepping up, and hopefully we can see some production out of him soon. Just people like that who are really young and have a lot to prove and show. So I really don't think there's going to be a lot missing with Brian out if he were to be out, because there's some big guys that know how to move big guys, and that's really all we need. And if JOK is out, it's going to be really hard to find another guy that can cover a tight end like he does, who can stop the run like he does, who can just get in there and disrupt a play. So if he is out, there's going to be some issues replacing him. I think you might have to see Sione in there a little bit more, and and some people, Tony Fields, I think could get some playing time. So it'll just be I just got an update that Myles Garrett had a shoulder sprain and a bicep strain in addition to laceration in his one car accident on Monday.
Look at that. Breaking news here on the podcast that's going to go up, 28 hours after we record. So, yeah, no, let's get into that. So, obviously, you and I are not doctors. We are just dudes with microphones who like football and, try to talk about it well. But a shoulder sprain, a bicep strain, that doesn't sound like, that doesn't sound like something that, you kind of get over in 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, this is going to be kind of unfortunate. Myles is one of the strongest guys that I know, and it might take him out. And I mean, look, Stefanski has a real buddy-buddy relationship with all these players. So if he needs to sit out, I think Stefanski is going to have no issue sitting him out. No disrespect to you guys, but I do think we need to rest him a little bit just for this game because it's not as big of a game as going into the Patriots and the Chargers that we have coming up. So if he is out for this game, it's going to be a loss, but I think we'll be all right for right now.
And that is frankly what you just said, the most important consideration, I think, from a coaching or team standpoint, right? And that's a little bit of my background. But when you are looking at, all right, what are our opportunities to, build in a little bit of rest time? Like the Falcons, their bye week is, off the top of my head, I think 14. Sorry, I haven't looked at the full schedule in a while, but it's crazy deep into the season. If Atlanta was in the same situation, maybe at 1-2, that starts a little bit different, but you guys are coming off of a big division win. Yeah, it's a longer week, but if your guys can't go, they can't go. And this is a non-conference opponent early in the year. It's much more important, like you said, for these guys to be healthier for the AFC competition that you're going to face, and more crucially, division matchups. So yeah, based on the news that we just got kind of over the Twitters, it seems like, yeah, maybe there is some concern with him suiting up. And it sounds like, and I agree, that if I was the Browns coaching staff, I'd maybe err a little bit more on the side of caution. But let's end on a positive note, or at least a little bit of a different note for the defense. I want to talk about the secondary and how they've played. It looked like they got touched up a little bit by the Jets and kind of their talented group of receivers. And it looks like the safety play may be a little bit better so far than the cornerback play, but am I reading that right? What have you seen?
Yeah, so the secondary really hasn't performed to the standards that we saw last year. Last year we had a top 5 defense, and that was a huge part to Denzel Ward being a top 5 player in his position in man coverage. Greg Newsome, who was a rookie, played outstanding. And John Johnson, I think, kind of bounced back after a rough start to the year. So that secondary has been kind of disappointing this year, and it's just a lot of miscommunication. After the Jets game, you saw Denzel trying to go for an out and trying to guard the flat, and then Corey Davis just goes right up the middle and gets an easy touchdown. So that communication might be our downfall, but we did pull it together Thursday night. The first half was a little rough, and I mean, George Pickens just made a fantastic catch, one of the better catches.
Yes. Oh my God.
Yeah, that was insane. So there's really not much you can do right there. But I think that they can really pull it together. Somebody like Ronnie Harrison hasn't played that much. If we can get him in, I think that kind of frees up the corners to, if they're playing so much off man or some zone coverage, then you have some more safeties out there that you can rely on. But we have all the tools to be fantastic, and I really don't know what's been going on right now. I think that we can certainly fix it going into the tougher games, but right now we have a lot to work on, a lot to study, and hopefully we can buff that up a little bit.
Yeah, I promise this is now my last one on the defense, but I just had to ask because as I was watching the all 22 of the Jets game earlier in preparation for this conversation, I made a note, number 23, Martin Emerson. Couple of times in quarters coverage, it looked like to my eye that he was really squatting on some of these shorter routes. And they obviously talked a lot about it on Monday Night Football last night with Trayvon Diggs, was really squatting on a lot of the routes against the Giants and Daniel Jones. And just like Peyton Manning, pointed out yesterday, and that's the inspiration for this idea, I wonder, could the Falcons try a little bit of a double move on Emerson. Was that something that you think is more matchup specific with the Jets, or is he a little bit of a, somebody who likes to maybe jump routes a little more frequently than others?
He definitely likes to jump routes.
There
I
we
was
go.
watching some of his. Yep, I was watching
It's
some of his
coming.
college tape, and he played against Jamison Williams. And I get it, Jamison Williams is a speedster. He's definitely an X factor, but Emerson was just getting cooked. I mean, a simple comeback route. A comeback route is just something that he doesn't really know how to guard, and just double moves will definitely be his downfall Sunday if you guys choose to do that.
All right.
He got
There.
he got beat by Garrett Wilson on a corner touchdown, just a little inside shimmy, and then he went back out. And
Yep.
he moves his hips and everything just to one side, and then can't recover. So I would definitely like to see that improve a little bit. And I mean, he's a physical guy. If you go straight up to the sideline with him, he's going to be physical, make a play on the ball, rough you up a little bit out of bounds. But yeah, those double moves are definitely his kryptonite right now.
Gave Nick Chubb a lot of praise. I think he is one of the best running backs kind of his era, but doesn't get the credit for it. But before the season, like I saw the Batman shit on Instagram, and it's like, seems like he's really so focused on this year, like wants to deliver a championship to Cleveland. Has this been, to your eye, like his best start to his NFL career has this been his best start since he's come into the NFL?
100%. He posted that video like 24 hours before game day. I was hyped up, and I'm pretty sure all of Cleveland was hyped up. And he goes out there and rushes for 141 yards. Didn't get a touchdown, and wasn't really mentioned by the NFL at all for 141 rushing yards in the first game, but we're not going to talk about that. He's running angry this year, and he doesn't show emotion, but you can definitely show how he feels through his play, and that's something that makes him really special. Definitely one of the all-time greats in franchise history, next to Jim Brown. So he's 100% that guy. And against the Jets, he had 3 touchdowns. Should he have went out of bounds? We're not going to talk about it because that doesn't matter. And then against Pittsburgh, I think he got 100 yards that game too. I'm not entirely sure. He came close to it.
I believe he did.
Yep. And so I really like what I'm seeing from him right now. He's the NFL rushing leader by kind of a decent amount right now. And if we can get him going a little bit more, I see no reason why he can't have a really good shot at the rushing title this year. He's missed out on it the last 2 years. He's been top 3, top 5, whatever. He's coming for it this year, and this might be the year.
Personally, I'd love to see him get it, but there's somebody else in this game that I would also love to see get that rushing title, and that's Cordero Patterson. And this is going to be an amazing matchup for, I think, people who love to see the run game. So maybe everybody like 52 and older. But before we kind of touch on, that certain aspect of this, we know Nick Chubb is really, I think, the heart and soul of this offense. But is it safe to say that right now, after what we saw in week 3, Nick Chubb, Amari Cooper, David Njoku, is that like Cleveland's big 3 on offense?
I think it's safe to say that, excluding Jacoby. I think Jacoby has really been a really solid anchor for this team. And with Baker Mayfield, I think we saw a leader, but if he was frustrated, he would just kind of shut down. I don't really think Jacoby has shown any signs of being frustrated or anything like that yet, obviously, because we're winning so far. But I think that is a pretty solid big 3. And Njoku needed some more targets in the first 2 games, but he found his stride in the 3rd game, and hopefully we can keep that going. And Amari Cooper has just been fantastic. He's been the second receiver since Josh Gordon to have 2 back-to-back 100-yard games with a touchdown. So it's really refreshing to have a true number 1. And I mean, we had Odell Beckham Jr., we had Jarvis Landry.
Different guys.
Yeah, very different guys. And I really like the production coming out of him. So I know Jerry Jones is kicking himself right now. We're kind of rejoicing that we have a number 1. And yeah, this big 3 is something that we've needed for a long time.
It's crazy to me because I think what happened with Amari Cooper is that, he's out in Oakland and kind of immediately we all come to the conclusion that it's like, yeah, this guy's a number one receiver in the league. No question. He does everything you want a true X receiver to do. Then he goes to Dallas, has that great first year. And then it's almost like everybody it's like, cool, we know exactly what this guy is. We don't have to think about him anymore. And then after that first year in Dallas, we got more excited about players like CeeDee Lamb or Michael Gallup or the other toys that Dallas had. And everybody just kind of assumed that Amari Cooper would continue to put up 1,300 yards and 7 touchdowns a season or something. But seeing him now in a new offense where he is the unquestioned kind of number one receiving option is a whole lot of fun because he's a great player. And it's really nice to be able to appreciate him in a renewed sense like this. But do you think this passing game is capable of carrying the offense by itself, or do they really need the run game to set everything up? Because, their production in terms of per game yardage totals is kind of drastically in favor of the run game. But I do think Kevin Stefanski does a great job of marrying that play action pass to the run game. So what would it look like if the Falcons were somehow able to take Nick Chubb off the table?
So we have, I've been kind of saying this on my podcast that we don't really have the talent at receiver, but we have the volume. So you have Demetric Felton, you have Michael Woods, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Harrison Bryant, and people like that can, throw a wrench into some team's defensive game plan. And we haven't really seen a lot of those guys yet. David Bell, I believe he only has like 2 targets on the year, something crazy like that. And everybody else that I mentioned has 6 targets in total on the year. So that's something that needs to be ramped up. If we can start getting the targets to them, then I think Atlanta will have kind of a tough time with that. And I really want to see Donovan Peoples-Jones prove why he's a number 2. We saw him try to be a number 1 last year with Baker Mayfield. It didn't work. That season was just kind of a throwaway in the back half. So seeing what he could do was important, and he didn't really show us what we wanted to see. So him taking a step back, regaining his confidence is going to be really crucial. And, you have Kareem Hunt. I know you said take away the run game, but Kareem Hunt is a very good pass catcher. We've seen him go on wheel routes and go 20, 30 yards down the field. He would have had a big play week 1, but Jacoby just overthrew him a little bit. So we definitely do have the offensive talent there. And if we can get that going, that'll be something interesting that teams are going to have to game plan for.
Yeah, I know that I wrote down in our outline any X factors in this game, not named Kareem Hunt, but I do think that he is actually the X factor, which is why I phrased it that way. And after you've kind of laid out all the receiving options, yeah, it seems like outside of the defined 3, and we'll say 4 because Jacoby Brissett runs the hell out of some QB sneaks, man. Yeah. And that has me a little worried on those 3rd and 4th and shorts because the Browns have been very good at converting those. But Kareem Hunt, is he kind of that true joker in the mix for Cleveland's offense?
Yeah, and he showed it last year where he could be a really solid goal line back. And I think
he's got good vision.
Actually, yeah, for sure. And what's a little more scary is like he's already a bowling ball with the way he runs, and now he's fighting for a contract extension. So that makes him a little more scary. And he's kind of shown it. He'll just get a 6-yard run and he comes up, he's flexing, he's doing all this. He's a guy that wants to be paid. So with the way that he's playing right now, it's definitely crucial that we get him going. And I want to see him in Cleveland for the next 2-3 years, whatever it may be. And I know we drafted Jerome Ford, so Hunt might walk, but he's definitely a special player that teams have to game plan for. It's a 2-headed monster back there. It's very hard to stop the run with people, as Marshawn Lynch says, hitting them in their face over and over and over again. It's really difficult.
It absolutely is. And, certainly when Nick Chubb is the 1 and then Kareem Hunt's the number 2, that's even harder than your typical running back by committee. But Noah, before we get out of here, I just have one final topic for us to cover. I want to flip things around. I want to give you the chance to talk about the Falcons from the Browns' perspective, and then we'll get into our final gut feelings for Sunday's game.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is Cordell Patterson. You mentioned earlier he's kind of been a tank so far, and if you
Mm.
get him in the red zone, that's going to be something that's pretty scary. The Browns defense does not have the best red zone defense, so if he just keeps hammering it home right there, I think that's going to be something that we're going to have to uh, be prepared for. And AJ Terrell, Casey Hayward, those are some two good corners, one of the top duos in the league. So, like I said, we will have to air out all of our receiver options. Amari might get figured out this game. That's something that we'll have to be prepared for. And then you look at Kyle Pitts. Obviously, he's a receiver. I mean, let's be honest. He can do it all. And if JOK is out, he might have a field day with how the secondary is playing. So, and Marcus Mariota. I mean, we have to go against Lamar Jackson all the time, but it's hard to game plan for somebody who may or may not run instead of, oh, he's going to do a QB draw. So Mariota is very talented. If he can kind of get it going on the ground, we might have a long day ahead of us, and it's going to be a really fun matchup. I think it's kind of going under the radar, and especially with these injuries on the Browns front, the Falcons might have a really good chance.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think this game is going to be incredibly fast to the average viewer. If you just turn it on and you're kind of keeping track for fantasy reasons of all the games around the league, and you're like, all right, there's 6 minutes left in the second quarter here, and this other game has 3 minutes left in the first quarter. Like, what's happening? It could be kind of one of those games where the Falcons and Browns are the first into halftime, first out of halftime, first over in the early window. It's because both of these teams love to dominate time of possession, and that does stem from their running games. The Falcons are at their best when Cordero Patterson is really running the ball well, and then they're able to throw it to Drake London, who you did not mention, but has been the Falcons' go-to guy so far outside of Cordero Patterson on offense. And I'm really excited to see how he looks. Like the Kyle Pitts, Drake London, they got them going in the last game against Seattle. I think that Cleveland's secondary is better than Seattle's, even though they have not played maybe up to that level yet this season, but they are very talented. So that's a matchup that I'm really excited to see. But I really do think something's going to break here, because Atlanta and Cleveland are the only two teams to score at least 26 points in all three of their games so far this season, which, just think about that for a second. Coming into the year, if you had said, hey, through 3 games, Atlanta and Cleveland without Deshaun Watson at quarterback, are going to be the only two teams to score at least 26 points, that would probably surprise a lot of people. But what do you think gives first? Is it possible for this to be a very quick game and also be a 32-30 type of shootout with the run games leading the way? Or could this end up being a little bit lower scoring and a quicker game?
I honestly think this might be a defensive game. Um, we are both kind of well rounded at our positions, and I know the Falcons have had some issues at safety, but they can really figure it out. And if we do not get this run game going, it's going to be kind of difficult because, like I said, AJ Terrell, Casey Hayward, they're very different players that we really haven't gone up against. They're very agile. They're very speedy. So I don't know. I think this could be defensive, and Jacoby might have some issues. Uh, I know Deion Jones hasn't really been playing. Grady Jarrett is kind of. I'm not entirely sure how Grady has been playing.
Grady is off to, we mentioned Nick Chubb's start to the season. This is one of the best starts I think I've ever seen from Grady Jarrett. He is playing like a man possessed. In fact, the next question I was going to have before we truly get to our final kind of gut feelings, and then I let you out of here. What's better, the interior of Cleveland's offensive line or the exterior? Because I know Joel Bitonio's been kind of, struggling through some injuries, but he's been gutting it out and playing through that. But, where would be the worst place for the Falcons to bring pressure? Because that's probably where they're going to line Grady Jarrett up.
I think our tackles are not fantastic right now in terms of pass rush. Jedrick Wills has. You can ask any Cleveland fan, and you're going to get the same reaction. He is just not really what we expected. And Jack Conklin is coming off of his surgery, so
Yep.
he looked okay against the Steelers. Didn't really see too much from him, but if you can just attack our tackles, I think that's going to be something that's going to be scary. And our interior is kind of nuts. We've spent a lot of money on those two guards. So, and I will say though, Wyatt Teller hasn't really been fantastic this year. He's had some penalty issues. Sometimes he's looked kind of lost, and it's not really something that I like to see. But I still think our tackles are our weak points right now.
Well, yeah, I would expect. I'm really curious to see Atlanta's kind of defense philosophy in this game, because after bringing a lot of pressure against the Saints in week 1, they've kind of dialed it back a little bit the last 2 weeks and played more zone. But if there is a week to kind of maybe dial that back up on some of these occasions, it could be this week, given some of the options that Cleveland has in the passing game. All right, Noah, before we get out of here, I'm gonna stop saying like final predictions, because none of us know actually how to predict anything. I mean, we're sitting here talking about, will Myles Garrett play or won't he? He may be playing on Sunday, and we may just be under the assumption he's not, and that changes all of it. So right now, things stand. Gut feeling. How's this game going to play out, and who do you like?
I think I'm obviously going to have to go with the Browns here, but I think the Falcons are going to of course, the Falcons are going to surprise us a little bit. I think with the Jets, we undersold them, and they came out firing with a veteran quarterback who just kind of knew how to pick us apart. If you guys can get Drake London going, if you can get Kyle Pitts going, which they have already been ramping up, I think it's going to be a long day for us, and we may get frustrated. We may have some miscommunication issues now that Anthony Walker is out and we're transferring the green dot again like we did last year. So it might be a lot closer than Cleveland fans think or want to admit, but I still do think the Browns are going to pull it out in the end.
That's totally fair. And I think that through 3 weeks, these are two of the coaching staffs that have done maybe the best jobs. I think that there's been just really quality play from both squads at times. There's not been these big, valleys where the team just drops off a cliff for an extended period of time. Atlanta had that fourth quarter collapse in week 1, but I think we've seen, enough through the last 2 games to know that maybe was a little flukish. And I do think they're closer to the consistent team we saw in week 3. And I think the Browns are the exact same way, even if they're a little more talented. However, given kind of the injury situation, given, coming off of, I think, a big win against the Steelers early in the season, and given the Cade York situation at kicker, I think these two teams are going to come out, be very evenly matched. And I think Atlanta's going to win 24-23 on a missed extra point at some point in the game by Cleveland. And I again, could totally be wrong, but right now it just feels like that type of game. Having watched both of these teams through their first 3 matchups, it just feels like it will be one of those back and forth things. And you'll get a couple of possessions where the offenses are rolling, and then a turnover one end, a defensive stand on another, and then it's 10-13 for a while. And then another team gets it's going to be one of those games. I think I say that it's going to be 38-35, and I'm not going to know anything about football anymore, but that's just kind of how I see it as it stands now.
Well, I take blame for the Cade York misses, because after he went 4 for 4.
Oh, do you?
I do, because after he beat the Panthers with the game-winning field goal, I impulsively bought his jersey, and I wore it. I wore it against the Jets, missed a kick, lost the game. I didn't wear it against the Steelers, but still missed a kick. And I don't know, it's really unfortunate that our special teams kind of collapsed. But I think that is a very, very valid thing. And if we have an onside kick, we might be screwed. So you guys could definitely win it right there.
I respect the hell out of you so much, man, because you bought a kicker's jersey.
I did. Yeah.
Wow. Good for you. Good for you. All right, Noah. Thank you so much for joining on today. Will you please let everybody know where they can find and follow your work?
Yeah, you can follow me on Brown Central on Instagram. Like you mentioned earlier, the Dawg Check podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, and we try to get episodes up weekly. So if you want to come in and listen to any recaps or previews, we welcome you in.
All right, man. I'm really looking forward to hearing your take on everything from the Browns' perspective after the game. So I encourage everybody to go check that out. But Noah, thank you so much. We'll have to do it again in the future.
Of course. Thank you.